All right. I want to start this off by first off taking those off because they bug me, so I'm sure it bugs you. I don't like the glare, and I don't know how to fix the glare. So at least this way, I got a little natural light from my window. Um, I've been dealing a lot with depression this last month. On the way home, I was so hyped up on adrenaline, mostly from fear, because I was not certain that I was going to make it home. I was calling my son as often as I could, and it was a case of I was fairly certain that my alternator was going out. Um, the numbers kept reading down towards, they're usually like at around 14. Sometimes they'll dip about halfway down to 13. But in this case, it was going below 13. And then when I'd stop to get gas, um, my car wouldn't turn over like it normally does. It took a while to get it to turn over. I would have to turn it off and redo it again. I don't know what the cause was. It's still doing it. I haven't figured it out yet. My son does have that little gizmo to stick under my steering column that's supposed to help me figure it out. But at this point, I was dealing with a lot. When I came back, I was so... My whole foot was almost round. It would not fit my sandals, which is what I slip in to drive. Um, so I barely got them on enough to come in the door. Now my feet are back down to normal size. In fact, it didn't take long. It only took like a week for that. But um, the adrenaline was rushing, just rushing so much. And then I'm about 3 hours still from here, and I noticed that in the rush to leave the property and get back here, um, well, first off, I ended up back a month early. I had intended to spend all of October at the property, but when my battery died and there was really no reason I could see for it, there was a rodent um, in my vehicle because it ate the few rose hips I was able to gather from, you know, and then from out of my yard. And then on top of that, the I had to have a friend come out and jump me, and he said my charge cables weren't working for some reason, and he had to use his, which I don't know, it has like a little extra power booster button on it or something, but it did start. And I went to church the next day, and then sweet people had put together funds so that I could come right home and not feel insecure and unsafe there for a whole month, not knowing whether my car was going to start or what have you, because I was just really out of it when I got home here to Joseph's. Um, I did come in and find these beautiful gloves that somebody gifted me. I don't know who. They're, I can't even at this point remember if it was in a package. That's so weird. I'm sure they were. I'm sure I opened it out of a package. But then later on, I got this in the mail, a jacket. It's a 5X. It's a little bit tight on the under the sleeves, but I'm sure it's gonna be fine. I may put like a gusset there, kind of thing. But I am capable of sewing. I'm back home with my sewing machine. I just have to rearrange my room. I finally bought a shelf on one of those pay over 3-month things on Amazon. So I was able to get some of my stuff off the floor. The majority of it is still just everywhere right now. Half of it's still in the car. Like I said, I've just been dealing with my depression really bad. I mean, I came back and all of a sudden I felt like, I don't know how to say it, maybe trapped. Like the adventuring part was done, and now I was stuck here, but it wasn't really stuck. It was just like stagnant. Like I didn't know what to do next, kind of a thing. I mean, before I had like a focal point, and then I got here and I really didn't. I'm really hoping you can hear me, because I'm doing all of this and I don't even have my speaker on or anything. So I guess I probably ought to check before I do much more. Hold on. Okay. Oops. That kind of got me off there, didn't it? Okay. Maybe if I scooch back a little bit, that'll work. Yeah, take this back off again. I got about 3 hours away. First off, it was taking me days. This is a 10-hour trip, and I had planned it to take 2-3 days max. And it seemed like every time I turned around, I was stopping because I was worried about the vehicle charging. And then I was about 3 hours from here, and I got the idiot light on my dash flashing at me that I need to change the oil. Well, since I'd left early, I had planned on changing that when I first got to Tennessee, and I totally forgot. So now all I had was enough cash for the gas to get me to Joe's house, and I had no cash, and I needed oil, and I had already run it almost. I looked it in the little sticker on the window and what my mileage was. I had almost gone 2,000 miles past what it should have been. So somehow, through that trip, I put on close to 5,000 instead of 3,000. Well, by the time I came back here, the plan was that I would have changed it before I started back here. And then, so I called my daughter and I asked her for a loan, and she transferred money to my account. And I got my oil changed that night. And I slept not knowing whether or not, well, actually, I got my oil changed the next morning because that night was too late. So I slept not knowing if my car would start in the morning. But it did. Thankfully it did. I was able to get in there. The first thing they told me was, well, you don't have an appointment. Y'all, I've never needed an appointment at Walmart in my life. It didn't make sense to me. But anyhow, they worked me in. I think it was the fact that I was ready to cry in their face if they didn't. I was so frustrated and so I can't move my car. It was really rough. And then when I got here and felt like I didn't know what to do next, I basically had a nice long breakdown. And so the other day, my son says, Mom, instead of paying the $300 for rent and what have you, use that money and buy some shelves for your room. And I need them so bad. It made me feel wanted. And then it was like, I don't know if it was the day before or the day after, but then he went and he put up the bathroom guard rail thingies for my tub so that or the tub so I could get in and out and everything without worrying. And that I'd had them in my room. I guess he just didn't know where to put them because it didn't take him but about half an hour to an hour to get them put in. And that was with having me go in there and lay down in the tub and measure where to put them and all that fun stuff. And then within a couple of days, they made a space on a kitchen shelf for me so I could have all of my gluten-free stuff, my air fryer and dishes and stuff down there, and didn't have to keep bringing them down there from upstairs back and forth. I've got to try and figure out some way, though, to over where the dishes are to kind of cover them, because I have to, before I use them, I have to go and rinse them off, wash them or rewash them as the case may be, because they're a very heavy gluten family. I mean, I raised them that way. I know they are. Bread is a wonderful thing and homemade is the best, which means there's gluten in the air. I mean, I got gluten in New Mexico just from smelling the Cinnabons at the truck stop. So, yeah, gluten in the air can even bother me. It's pathetic. It really is. But I've noticed that I lost a good 40 pounds from the time I started being gluten to the time I got back here. So within a couple of months, I'd lost 40 pounds, and the only thing I changed was being gluten-free. My old eating habits were basically the same when traveling, except it was gluten-free. It was more expensive. Being gluten-free is very expensive because I don't have the food supply buildup like I had before, because that all kind of burnt down in the fire, So, I mean, I lost whole freezers of food. So even though I had gluten-free things, because I always kept on some gluten-free things in the freezer and in my shelves and stuff, because my daughter was celiac. So I wanted to be able to have her something she could eat if she ever came to be with me. And so, yeah, even though I had stocked up on some things, at this point, I'm starting with no stocks. If you can imagine somebody who had a year's supply on hand and was still drawing from that year's supply to make ends meet, and then no supply on hand. Foraging isn't a real option for me where I'm at, mostly because of the steepness of the hill. There is a small wooded area back behind the house, but the steepness of the hill would keep me from climbing it and foraging and stuff and discovering my way through what have you at this point. My prayer is that the more I stay on my gluten-free stuff, that the more I'll lose, the more energy I'll have, and be able to get that done. Depression sucks, guys. If you have somebody that's dealing with depression in your life, let me tell you, they are not telling you it all. We hide that stuff. We hide it so that others don't, so it doesn't affect others as much as it would otherwise. We hide it because we love our families and we don't want them to know just how bad we're feeling, because we want them to feel loved. And so my mom used to always say, fake it till you make it. Never ever tell somebody who is suffering with depression that nonsense. Just don't. It's rude. It's like your emotions don't count. You could just fake it. No, there's a point you can't fake it anymore. I mean, and if it's hormonal, you're dealing with it monthly, at least. And if it's not, just understand, please. There are people that are carrying a lot of weight right here. My sweet Tedrick used to tell me, your shoulders are always hurting because you carry the weight of the world on them. And my time with him, those 4.5 short years, it feels like one of the first times that I had the weight lifted off. I mean, I look back at it from this point, and I'm fairly certain I've been in some sort of a trauma since I was 5 years old that I know of. Actually, no, since I was, 5, maybe 4, no, 3. 3 was the first trauma I remember. At 3, I and my little sister, who was just a baby, were admitted to the hospital. And I remember, I had a sheet kind of pulled around my bed, but I remember the doctor saying that it didn't look like my sister was going to make it. And I remember my beautiful inner child, the natural child, of course, but innocent child, I guess, went to praying. And I prayed that God would take me and let her live. At 3 years old, I had that much faith that God could do it. Fortunately for me, my sweet baby sister survived, and so did I. I don't remember a whole lot between 5 and 3. besides that, at 5, I remember, was when my mom married my stepfather and the molestation started. I don't care what they call it. Rape is rape. Just because it's from a family member does not make it any less bad. And then from when we finally got out of that mess, after all of the beating and everything else that man did, and the threatening of my mom, I carried that threat for my mom until I was 16. And I had my dad to protect me and to protect my mom, because I know he'd do it because he was a big man. Yeah, I guess y'all are going to get the whole shimoli at this point. Um, there was a point, I'm sure I've mentioned before, that our family was running from the law. My parents had basically kidnapped my 2 baby brothers. My mom was already running from my natural, or not from my natural father, but from my stepfather, because he was a police officer. He was a sergeant in the police force in Illinois, and he would knock her around, and he would knock us, the boys, around, and he molested me, and I was so afraid for my sister to get older, and I'm pretty sure that at one point he even arranged for somebody else to call and talk gross stuff to me on the phone. Because I can remember what was said, and I can remember looking, and my stepfather was right there in front of me. And I couldn't understand how he could be in 2 places at once. Yeah, we did have tape recorders back then, but still he would have had to have somebody to play it for him. I mean, this was back in the 70s, which meant he was sharing me. It's just wrong, guys. I went through a lot. How do I share this? This is an adult forum, basically. I definitely put that this is not for kids. So if you have a kid watching this, you can let them leave the room at this point. But let's just put it this way. He didn't get what he wanted because the Lord made me different. In fact, I wasn't even able to use tampons until I had a hymenectomy when I was a teenager. So there's that. The Lord protected me in so many ways. Is it any wonder that I have faith in Him? I am so grateful. for our Heavenly Father in my life. I know without a doubt that Christ is there for me, that He paid for my sins, and He has protected me my entire life. And having the Spirit to guide me, the Holy Ghost, is so wonderful. I am so grateful, y'all. You know, I didn't even realize it had been a month since I made my last video or so, because I'm still feeling the feels, even though I felt so welcomed by Joe actually doing those things for me and everything. Still feeling the feels. But still knowing the Lord will get me through it and out of it. And I will overcome and I will thrive. Because He took care of Job, didn't He? So He can take care of me. I've considered the lilies of the field. I mean, they're fed. And I think sometimes that's what I'm feeling right now, is more of a worry of what will I do? What can I do? What's next, Lord? But I didn't realize it had been so long until one of my followers, can't remember his name right now, I think it was a male. It was a guy's name, I think, or at least I thought it was when I read it. But anyhow, he told me that y'all were worried about me, and so I wanted to come on here. I promised him I would do something before the weekend was out so that you would know I am okay. Next week, I will try to do a couple of videos. At some point, my shelves should get here, so I will let you join me in building those. I will probably have to put it on fast forward. It will be a long video for me building those things and putting them in place and organizing and what have you. But I also want to show you, I did a thing. Yesterday was Samhain, I think that's how it's pronounced. It was Halloween. I am not a celebrator of Halloween. My children, or my son and his family, consider themselves Druid, though they do have a lot of Christian stuff in there as well. Or Christians have a lot of Druid stuff in them. I'm not certain. He would probably argue it that way. But the fact is, they had a special meeting last night. My youngest son was sworn into the family, sort of a thing. Sort of like when we do baptism at 8 years old, age of accountability. They wait till they're of an age of accountability before they do a swearing in, before they're allowed to make commitments that they don't understand what they're making. And basically their commitments were to the family, to protect them, to teach them, to love them, to help them, things like that. It was a very beautiful ceremony. I mean, I don't understand the fires and the burning, except that, hey, it's at night. It's supposed to be, from what I looked up, I Googled, it's supposed to be basically a celebration between the end of fall and the beginning of winter. So, like a harvest festival, like we would think of Thanksgiving, only it was Samhain. So, basically, they did a big meal and everything. And one of the things all day long, actually, it started the day before, they were baking bread and baking pies. And it was so wonderful. And I was up in my bedroom, starving, trying to stay away from being glutened. But so I decided after all the pies were done baking and everything, and they were just working on the meat courses and what have you, I went down and I took some rice paper and I cut up an apple and added on some brown sugar and some cinnamon and rolled it up. It was basically a log that was about 6 inches long. It just barely fit in my air fryer. Um, and I baked it basically. My air fryer fried it, whatever you want to call it, but I put some butter on top and bottom to, so it had a good coating of yummy stuff. And I, instead of using the trays that have the little holes in them, since I wanted it to retain the brown sugar and the butter when they melted, I used the drip pan that's usually on the bottom, and I put it up where one of the other pans were. So it was more like a baking sheet. So anyhow, the rice paper ended up crusty, crunchy, not crusty, but crunchy. And with the apples and cinnamon and sugar and everything baked in, it was really good. So that's something I'm going to look at doing as a tutorial kind of thing, only making them smaller, because I think that would have helped. I think that I used 3 sheets of rice paper, and I think it would have been better had I just used 2, maybe just, I don't know exactly, maybe set them inside of one of my glass cooking bowls and layering the rice paper in there and then putting in the apple filling and folding it up. Not certain that the rice paper would get as crunchy on the bottom, but I'm willing to give it a shot. And also I want to do a couple of smaller ones, not the big long one like I did, but do a couple smaller hand pies similar to it, so that I can try out both things, and I will have you along for making it and at least tasting the hand pies, if not the other one. But I've seen a lot of Oriental videos where they do that sort of thing with the making hand pies, only they're made with veggies and stuff. And I want that, but I also want some treats that I can make up for the holidays and enjoy my treats without having to go overboard, you know? So I think that's some of the things I want to accomplish this week. Um, Thank you for joining me. Now you know a little deeper about the things going on with me. I think in some ways the fire was just a way to burn up the past, even though it makes me feel free in that aspect. I still have worries about whether or not I'll have enough money for food. And with everything going on in the world right now, whether or not I'll even get my Social Security. I hear that it is supposed to be insured to stay open whether the government shuts down or not, but I don't know. My budget mind does not comprehend just how that works when I know that the country is in so much deficit. It just doesn't make sense to me. But I'm grateful for it because I can imagine these people that are relying on their SNAP benefits right now. And I know that's hard. And I pray that the Lord takes care of them. The Lord takes care of you in all your hours of need, whatever that be. God bless y'all, and thank you for joining me today.